Hello, hello. Welcome back to Diary of a Psychic Medium with me, Amber Amrine. Today, Alexander Josephson is back once again, this time to explore the mysteries of the universe, consciousness, and the afterlife. Today, we are expanding on our curiosities, diving into the greater significance of life on Earth. Here we go. Alrighty, this was a very mind-bending, curious conversation. It was such a fun one to have. Just a quick reminder, Alexander Josephson is a Toronto-based architect, designer, and entrepreneur. He is the co-founder and president of the award-winning architecture studio Partisans, known for experimental projects that fuse design, technology, and culture. He is also the founder of Cumulus, a digital memorial platform exploring how architecture, technology, and ritual can help people preserve memories, honor loved ones, and build meaningful legacies. Cumulus was born after Alexander nearly lost his father. During 9 months of hospitalization, he realized how little his family had preserved: photos, videos, and meaningful records of a life. He envisioned Cumulus as a digital architecture for honoring loved ones in a way that mirrors how memory actually works. In a culture that avoids death, Cumulus was founded to help people preserve lives, and as we discuss in this conversation today, you can even use it for healing, for inner child work, for manifestation. Sky's the limit. Here's Alexander. All right. Well, welcome back. Long time no see. Okie dokie. So today we're going to talk about some stickier stuff. I'd love to explore more of the afterlife and your views on death and such. I guess just to jump right on in, what is your relationship with spirituality?
It's a good question. I'm a bit superstitious, to be honest with you. I think that's where I enter into it, but I think that also having my two daughters recently, like in the last year and a half, 2 years, having kids, just there's a kind of energy that I notice, and much more emotional. So, and I'm also really, outside of my day jobs, architecture and Cumulus, and everything that I have going on in my life as a father, I'm also really interested in physics. I was always interested and fascinated with the universe and its workings. Maybe I would have been a physicist in another lifetime with better complex algebra skills. um, that you know, like it's funny. People always say like, "Oh, I was not good at math, so I couldn't be an architect." And it's like most architects don't know how to add and subtract. I don't think, but I mean, I'm being facetious. But I certainly, to be an astrophysicist, you probably need advanced, like, standout mathematical skills. So I think I was okay. I was certainly above average, but I actually started reading a book recently by two very successful engineers who have a physics background in France, who've written a book on the possibility of God, and it's a fascinating read. And they just talk about how, from a physics perspective and mathematics perspective, it's just there's too many things at too high a level of specificity and narrow sensitivity in terms of mathematical constants in physics to not conclude that there's like a higher power. They're arguing for the possibility of God in the book, so I'm reading that right now, actually, and it's a fascinating read.
When I was small, my dream actually as a child was to pursue astrophysics. I loved learning about space and felt very connected. I had some trauma that caused PTSD, and unfortunately, a big trigger of my PTSD became space, because there was a situation by a telescope. The telescope was out and we were looking, I think like Mars, you could see it or something. And that's when one of the traumatic instances happened. So it became a very big trigger for me. And that is sort of what pushed me deeper into energy work. I grew up in a family that was very connected spiritually in general, but I couldn't face everything more from I don't know, book. I guess I needed to understand the deeper connections and what's happening, I guess, behind the scenes. So I started to explore more the energetics of the framework of the world and such. But yeah, it's so interesting. Do you believe in an afterlife? What is your relationship with death?
Do I believe in an afterlife? I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Um, I'm sorry that you had. I'm sorry that you went through that, and that it's associated with something as profound as looking through a telescope and looking up at the sky. It must change what it's like for you to look up at the starry night.
It's actually brought me a lot closer to it. When I was from about 16 to 18, I started to very seriously address my PTSD and my triggers and such. And one way that I did it, I just did like exposure therapy basically. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and the Griffith Park Observatory, I would be there every single day to like get in there, find that like passion and curiosity again to overpower the heavy memories associated. So if anything, it actually was this like very grounding force that was there before and after. And I almost had to get out of my own way to sort of reconnect to it, you know? So I think with that whole situation, while obviously horrible and like, you know, if I didn't have to go through that, that would have been cool. I feel like it did have its gifts in many ways and strengthened my relationship, I feel, um, to space and particularly to abstract thinking, creative thinking, finding ways around things, you know, problem solving, all of that. Yeah.
So the question is do I believe in an afterlife?
Yes.
I don't know. Sometimes I believe in this life, like that there's energies, like regardless of whether we go back to kind of like this collective consciousness that, when you close your eyes and dream, we're not part of this, seemingly the world, the day, we're part of this other realm. And I certainly don't believe in the afterlife as described by the books. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in any of the organized religious versions of that, because that's predicated on behaviors that I think are just, I don't agree. So there's certain things that those histories and those peoples did and do that are good. I mean, there's reasons to like certain elements of organized religion, but I think that the version of consequence, good, bad, evil, it's relative to each of these organized groups. So I don't believe in their version of the truth. I think there's some good things, but that I don't agree with. I'm much more interested in I'm much more interested in the possibilities of what, just real physics tells us about energy and our connection to each other. I don't think it's unreasonable or ridiculous to talk about quantum fields and entanglement and all the things that physicists are doing in very serious ways at very important institutions like CERN and Perimeter Institute in Toronto, in Waterloo, actually, which is right near where I studied at university at Waterloo, is one of the leading places in the world where astrophysics and complex mathematics are being tested at the very edge of possibility. In fact, there's a new physicist that I really am interested in, a woman um, who they didn't let into physics at MIT or Stanford. I can't remember. It was one of the two. Gosh, I should look her up. She's at the Perimeter Institute. I've been meaning to kind of learn more about her work because it's so fascinating, the way that physics it drives down further into the possibility of arguing for another power, an organizational power, and it's certainly a much higher order, in my opinion, than any of these sort of written qualities or anthropomorphic qualities. So I'm interested and curious in that as spiritualism. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like when beliefs start going in the direction of right and wrong, punishment, I don't know. There's a lot of fishiness, I feel, for me personally, because, and I guess it's just my belief, but I view God or a higher power, whatever you want to call it, as simply this divine love, this pure base energy that permeates everybody and everything. And I feel it more as, I suppose, a curious energy, if you want to call it that. But beyond anything else, it is beyond emotions. It doesn't feel. It's an energy. It just is, right? So when things start coming into the realm of good, bad, do this, not that, it feels very human to me, and it feels like it's trying to scare people into being controlled, which I don't resonate with.
Yeah, I
Because
agree with that.
I don't feel that anything necessarily is, well, generally, I don't feel that things are necessarily good and bad. Things just are. It's our perspective, it's our conditioning that assigns a certain experience or rule to it, but I don't feel that a higher power would like care enough. I don't know if that's the right word, but I don't see the correlation. I don't feel that a higher power would be human, because a human experience is so emotional. We are so impressionable. There's just so much convoluted energy, I feel, in our daily experience, that I feel like a higher power would have to be devoid of that in order to operate purely.
Too many atoms and antimatter for a higher power anthropomorphically to think about. Too many of us to think about it. It's got to be a higher order of power than that, to me.
Yeah.
But that's why I think physics is the door to for me spiritually. Like it just makes you think about the energy that connects us. And I know some people might be like, you're crazy, but I mean, a lot of very, very respected physicists and also social critics have talked about this, and um, I don't think it flies in the face of the principles of what organized religion's trying to do, which is ultimately to make a world a better place and to treat people better. But the problem is that it prefers certain people over others. And that's where you get into sticky behavior. It prefers certain people over others. It prefers men over women sometimes. It prefers certain animals over others. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of preferences in there. And I'm not sure they have a lot to do with living a better life on this planet, other than ordering things. And in the end, human beings, I think we all probably thrive in structures, and it's natural that these things came about. But we're evolving, and I think with that evolution, and especially the way our understanding of the universe is evolving, there's other ways to see spiritualism, and I think that's where I'm interested in, and I think that I have to be more conscious of that in how I just operate as well.
Sure. Yeah. I always view organized religion too as like mythology. I view all religions essentially as mythology. It's trying to find stories, put into words, these deeper concepts that we may feel or we may be curious about. And at the heart of all of these stories is a similar flavor, right? But I feel like that's what matters over what is actually being said. Because if there is this higher power, it's being translated in a way that our human brain can sort of wrap our head around it. So why would the words be the law if it's already having to be translated? Its pure nature is already becoming a bit skewed just for us to be able to digest it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that the way of looking at it as story or mythology is beautiful, because the more stories we have that we can tell that access people's imaginations and inspire people, the better. We tell all sorts of stories about ourselves, and that's great. I think that that's part of human history, and like let's lean into that. Let's lean into the stories. Let's tell better stories, and let's allow people to tell those stories. It's funny, like in a way, the world sort of gravitated to these reality TV and hyper realism and hyper reality, whereas in the past, people really had these abstract, almost just fantastical views of the world that were unhinged from what today we consider reality. And I find it interesting that we worship, they worship these, mythological characters or mythological storylines as if they were real. Some people today obviously still believe those things. All the power to them, as long as it brings us together and it doesn't tear us apart. But I think there is a beauty in that way of looking at the world versus the kind of rampant materialist direction we've gone in, which is, I don't think, totally compatible with also treating people very well. I was watching actually Ayn Rand, who I don't agree with a lot. She wrote a book called The Fountainhead about architects. So I think architects have a love-hate relationship with Ayn Rand. It sort of also informs that movie that just came out recently. Adrian Brody played an architect, and it was a kind of brutal depiction of the stereotypical character of an architect from Ayn Rand. But it was interesting to listen to her point of view about people, and this idea of people being responsible for each other being problematic from the sense of dehumanizing an individual's desires, freedoms of expression, and freedoms of their own to live their lives the way they want to autonomously and have agency. And it was very fascinating to see her just grilled in black and white in the 1950s about her views about personal freedoms and how she's against the kind of moralistic approach versus an agency-based approach in human freedoms, versus like everybody being responsible for everybody else's behavior versus, well, what about your own behavior? And if you have freedom, you have the freedom to also behave well or bad, but also pursue your desires, or your freedoms. And it was fascinating to listen to her because I think it taps into this spiritual dimension as well, because it's so ephemeral what she's talking about. It's this space between uh, these two sides, and one side being the kind of like moralistic, social. It was a socialist view of your identity. You're part of the mass versus the individual, and then on the other hand, like total chaotic uh, freedom and agency. And it kind of reminds me of the space, between the quarks or bosons in physics, like what's between there. And they're starting to talk about this now, and this idea that you have to look at that differently. And there's something magical in that great that mysterious beyond microscopic space between these elementary particles and pieces of our universe. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Do you feel that humans are innately good or innately evil?
From what I can tell, um, it's taught. Love is taught, and so is evil. And I don't think we're born either way, but I think you can really, I think you can, I think that it can be encouraged. Um, a lot of people say, "Oh, but you can be born evil." I don't know. I look at children, and I don't know. Like, yeah, there's some pretty tough kids out there, but I'm not sure if two loving parents can't guide a person. Um, I want to hope so. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. A psychologist may say, "Well, there are exceptions, Alex," and I'm maybe there are, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure that there's um, a configuration of neurons that you're born with that causes extraordinarily violent behavior naturally, or psychopathic behavior naturally, and you don't have any recourse. Um, so of course there's exceptions, but I think you have to look generally, but also acknowledge that some people are necessarily potentially born with these differences, and it's like, well, how do you help them, or how do we acknowledge that uh, potential for apathy and sociopathic behavior, which a lot of people may have. How do you manage it? How do you recognize it? And I think it has to do with recognizing and acknowledging that psychology is a really important thing, and the stigma around psychology, uh, it just has to stop, because it's so important to the way people just treat each other. And so the answer to your question is maybe, but but I believe in the power of two loving people or a loving parent to bring someone along the right path, barring these kinds of physical limitations, of course.
I feel like humans are very complicated, but we're all like a puzzle, I suppose, where I think there is going to be a formula that pushes us into some sort of goodness, and a formula that can push us into some sort of badness. But I feel like, I mean, I am an optimist as well. So I feel like there's always a way, because there are people, I've watched interviews of people that are psychopaths. They just do not feel, but they find ways to control that because that's how they were taught. They were given the tools at a young age to maintain some sense of moral compass, if you want to call it that. Like, they've found ways to have relationships and partnerships, and they're not like going out there and killing animals or like something crazy, you know what I mean? So I feel like some people are born with an inability to feel, and sure, there are some things that may just give someone a very difficult start, but I do feel like there is a way to push them or provide the tools to lean them in a direction where they can be a very special part of their community. I had a conversation, I think last month, on the podcast with John Knapp, and we were exploring the overall purpose of psychopaths. Like, what do they provide for the community?
How come there's so many? How has it evolved as a human trait?
Exactly. Yeah. Why is it, how is it persisted? And my thought of it was, I mean, especially in the olden days when we're all these little tribes, if you have someone that just doesn't really give a fuck and they are the community, the tribe is trying to look for new areas to move to, sure, that's a great person to go out and explore because they don't care. They're not afraid. They're just going to go, they'll be curious, and they can help expand the group in ways that others may be a little bit more reluctant to lean into. But I'm curious your view of that. I mean, what do you feel are the strengths of having that kind of mental program?
Gosh, I wish I could recognize them more easily. It's a good. I don't know how it's so prevalent, but I think you're right. If I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken, it's a significant percentage. You're talking between 15 and 30% of the population exhibits. Yeah, if my if my numbers are correct, I think it's a significant number. So it's not, and obviously probably different shades uh, of clinical or non-clinical handbook of diagnosis uh, on the extreme, on like how extreme. I don't know, but a lot of our leaders end up exhibiting these qualities, and so there is an element of incredible desire for attention, control, uh, wrapped up into there's no limit to what you'll do to achieve your 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 needs. The question is, do your needs involve other people?
Yeah.
That's my question. I don't know. I don't want to focus on those kinds of people because it's just in a way it's like if you're talking about it, potentially you have the ability to learn who to stay away from, how to recognize them, and also at the same time, just do we have any of these qualities?
Yeah.
You know, can I look at myself in the mirror and say that, you know, I'm not perfect. It's interesting being in tech. You know, I said that my life started in architecture and evolved into also being in tech through Cumulus, which is based on trying to save and preserve the most important memories and things that are fragile and digital. Um, one of the founders of one of the most important large venture capitalist funds for technology said that basically, like, he's if I sense that a founder has any self doubt or self critical personality traits, I don't want to invest in them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, like you're basically saying that you won't invest in someone who has any conscience. And I think they actually said it. Like, I'm not interested in people. I'm not interested in investing in someone with a conscience. And I
Wow.
was like, these are the people controlling which projects, which leaders are getting the capital, and therefore which things we in the public are going to be exposed to. It is so dangerous. It is so dangerous, and they're controlling this. And I always thought, like, as a founder in tech, I don't fit the mold at all. I'm over the age of 40. Uh, I have another job that I'm successful in. I have a family. Um, I tick all of the boxes that they don't want to see because I have real responsibilities outside of making them money. And all they want to see is someone who ticks the boxes of just complete and utter focus on making them money at all costs, any cost, not only to themselves as a human being, as a founder, but to everybody around them, all in the service of this investor's capital. And that's coming from from the largest venture investor in the world. And I was shocked when I heard that. But that's what's driving technology investment. That's what's driving AI investment. And you see some people fighting against this. Dario Amodei from Anthropic. There's a couple other people who've sort of drawn some lines in the sand. This is very dangerous. And I'm not just talking about AI. I'm talking about all sorts of other technologies. But
that is interesting, because I feel like that takes me back to, I think these people are good innovators because perhaps their mind goes in places that your average person would be afraid or reluctant to go, but then there needs to be a line. And I feel like that's where the community, the nature versus nurture aspect sort of comes in. And in that regard, with just investments, money, how the world is run right now, they're just like, go crazy. Screw it. That those rules and regulations aren't in place, which is a very scary thing. That is
no,
crazy.
it's funny. It's funny. There's no regulation. I always find it interesting that our newspapers and our television channels have to operate by these rules and have these governing bodies, and yet the biggest channels of information in the world, which are no different than having a TV and a TV channel, have zero regulation whatsoever. It's like the biggest con that's ever occurred in the history of 20th century technology and business and governance. There's zero governance. And that's why you're seeing countries like Australia and Canada start to think, like Australia already did it, but Canada's thinking about banning social media for anybody under the age of 16. And now you're starting to see the lawsuits about addiction and self-harm. And like, when was the last time you saw CBS sued for someone being addicted to it or hurt themselves because of the content? Like, or I mean, even Fox, I don't know, maybe I just think that like the parameters, it's not a level playing field. And we want to talk about spirituality. When I think that I'm guilty of it myself. My wife would probably laugh at me for saying this, but like I'm probably a phone addict. Like I'm constantly checking. It probably distracts me from my own kids. So it's like I have to work on it.
Yeah.
I have to work on it. And it's just like they really have us captivated. And it takes away from all the things that you and I are talking about now, which is our connection. Like I know that in this format, there's a connection. I can hear you. I can see you. And whereas on there, it's empty.
Yeah. It's so, man, I am just so curious to see how things continue to move, because for so long, all of this was just happening in the shadows, right? No one was aware of it. It was a different time, but right now, there's just so much from so many directions. I mean, there are these things like the phone where if you have people behind it or like pushing for new innovative technologies and such that don't care, all they want is money. They want us addicted to it. It just feeds the system. But we're also becoming more and more aware of that. We are aware of what's happening in the shadows to a degree. And I'm just curious how this tug of war is going to settle. I'm very optimistic that things will settle in a much more aligned, in a way that's just good for humanity. It may take a while, But I am optimistic that power will be sort of pulled back to the people, but I am curious to see what happens. Such an interesting time.
Yeah, like I believe that we're moving towards it being regulated. Um, Here, I just did a quick search while we were on here, and it took 15 years from basically 1927 to 1941 for the Federal Communications Commission to be created and then start to regulate this stuff. And if you think about it, we're 2025, 2026. What these companies have become is so powerful that they've pushed that out to 20, 25 years. And I think the difference is just they've made a lot more money a lot quicker, and so they're a lot more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been able to use their power to avoid the consequences of regulation and also the consequences and the responsibilities they have for their impact on societies around the world. So, and the misinformation and propaganda that they circulate. So, I think it's coming to a head. I just don't see the world tolerating this. I mean, it's become so clear, and part of the reason I started Cumulus was Facebook and Instagram and Google Drive and iPhotos is no place to commit your most important memories and celebrate your family or your ancestors or your 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 future family. That's not what those places are designed for. And so I wanted to create a safe space, a safe place. It was my desire to create a beautiful architecture, and I challenged myself and my studio and the people who joined me, my collaborator Corey as our CTO and Sasha. Can we make a beautiful sanctuary? Can we access the spiritual? Can we make someone's hair stand up when they go visit their family cloud? Can we create a safe digital experience and place, a space where you put these things consciously? And I think we've been successful. We just need to now share with the world, and that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
And there's a billion good ideas, and you can build them, but how do you disseminate them?
Yeah.
And then that goes back to our, you know, that goes back to our other thing, which is the channels, right?
I didn't think about this before, but now that we're talking about it, I think Cumulus would also be such a beautiful space to create like an aspirations space where
Sure.
you make it sort of like I don't know, immerse yourself in how you want your future to look. I guess sort of like how people make little manifestation boards or
I was thinking
something.
the exact same thing. It's like a manifestation space. People talk
Yeah.
about this all the time. If you think about it and you visualize it, you can make it happen, and that I believe that that's true. And if you bring that energy to any interaction, but also you are able to immerse yourself in that spiritual kind of space, there's so much possibility for that. I've linked it to mortality. I've linked it to the sublime in that sense, but it's a much more open field. You can use it for anything you want. In
Yeah.
that sense, it's a very immersive place, and it's open. There's no rules around what you're able to upload and experience. So bathe yourself in your ambitions, bathe yourself in your ethics, bathe yourself in your desires. Um, that's what we've created a space and a place where you can do that.
Yeah.
That isn't just endless droning and scrolling, scrolling
Hmm.
and scrolling. I think the scrolling is the problem, right?
Absolutely.
It's very addictive.
Thinking about it too, a lot of people have a very there's a big disconnect, I suppose, between them and their inner child. Typically, when they start really healing or looking at themselves deeper, they tend to begin more with childhood wounds and reconnecting and, all of that stuff. But I feel like Cumulus could actually be such a great space even for that, devoting like a cloud to your child self and a cloud to your adolescent self or something, just to honor the magic that you were, that perhaps became a bit broken down over time, but existed at one point. I feel like it's such a, because it's so open, there's so much possibility for it, for healing, for grief, for manifestation. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I started doing that for my family and my daughters. Like, there isn't just the family cloud. There's these very specific things to them, and these moments that are about life, and not about death. And I think it's about connecting, and it's also about giving a gift, either to yourself or to someone else, like a time capsule,
Yeah.
um, and capturing how you manage to bring out the energy to say these things and record them and then save them, because you have to create that energy, because it's not driven by narcissism.
Mhm.
It's about making impact.
Why do you think death, mortality, is such a taboo topic, despite the fact it is something we all experience?
Because it causes paralysis. It's overwhelming. That's the only way I can describe it. And I come from a family of scientists and doctors, uh, where mortality was talked about all the time, and it's still, I can feel the inertia that, dealing with a will, dealing with memories, dealing with trauma, dealing with grief. There's a I think a natural discomfort to address it until you have to, because it's so painful and it's profound. Fundamentally, when you're grappling with these kinds of these kinds, with anything with mortality, it's the weight, the gravity of of that in your mind and our emotional state it's significant. And I think a lot of people, it just stops them in their tracks, and the fact that you don't have any control over it. You have no control. I mean, there are tons of people who are, you know, biohackers who, they're convinced they can not only extend their lives, but get to this point where AI and technology is going to create immortality, and all the power to them. But there is something beautiful about having a limited amount of time on this earth and making the most of it, versus
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to a point where we have unlimited time and it doesn't matter what the F I do. So I don't know where I read or learned this, but maybe the things we have in life, the good and the bad, are because of the anxiety around not being in control of how long we have. And if we could just guide people to do better, not just for themselves, but for the people around them, be a little bit more generous, maybe, like, would be a good thing. But it's only two things in life that are certain: death and taxes. So both are unpleasant, and most cultures don't address it in pleasant ways. There's some cultures that are much closer to it. Mexican culture has the Day of the Dead, which is an amazing cultural phenomenon, and I think different than most places in the world. Confucian cultures have an incredible ancestry worship, behavior that is very beautiful, doing honor to your ancestors and to the people who come after you. As an architect, the Athenians used to take an oath that, leave the city that you inherited as a privileged citizen better for the next group that inherits from you. So I take these things pretty seriously, but I'm involved in a kind of niche world, architecture and design, and then also now memorialization and death services. So my views may not be so mainstream about it, but I feel like everybody can relate to these things I'm saying.
Yeah. There was I think it may have been 2 years ago or so. Throughout October, all of my podcasts, or no, there were two parts to it, I think. But I was exploring different cultural behaviors around death. And there are some beautiful practices. And I feel like it all really comes down to when it's ingrained in the culture that things don't end here, people have a much easier time respecting and honoring death. It takes off, I feel, a big weight of the grief
Well, you're
because it,
part of a you're part of a continuum, whether that's
yeah,
heaven or whatever the books and organized structures want to tell you it is. You are connected. You have parents. They had parents. The person on the street committing a crime or homeless, they had a parent. Two people got together. I said that walking. I said that walking my daughter to school in the morning the other day, walking by a really just really unfortunate person, and just like we're connected. We're connected, and it's your choice how you want to behave. But when you really think about it, when you do a family tree, you realize you're like a branch on a huge tree, and we're all related, and it's pretty beautiful. It's also overwhelming because it's like, well, what's the point? We're all like we're all part of this. Just you talk about the kind of enormity and gravity of pondering the cosmos, the scale of it all. The stars, well, they're beautiful and we're beautiful, but if you think about it in the context of like, well, you're just another star in the universe, you're just another person in a continuum. I think some people will go just get overwhelmed by it and say, well, I'm not going to think about that. I'm just going to do what I do and make myself happy. And it doesn't matter what that trail of devastation is, even to myself. But I do think about just like just going back to where we started with the physicians who wrote the book on the possibility of God. So iron, like the element, like the heavier elements, are formed in uh, incredibly violent star centers and star cores and black holes and neutron stars, and just like the idea that the iron in our blood was created in us. I mean, it's so fantastic. If you just, I want to tell a speech to the UN and just be like, the iron in your blood, all of you sitting around here killing each other, came from the center of a star, billions of light years away. And it's a miracle you exist. It's a miracle. And I'm okay with it not being an anthropomorphic version of events that caused all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to exist. But wow, you got to start thinking about the bigger picture.
yeah.
Like it's because it's profound. But the problem is, it's like the myopia of it all, the small-mindedness of our fights and our differences. It's all constructed for hegemonic reasons too, control.
Mm-hmm.
So am I spiritual? Yeah. I'm like, start thinking about things at that level, the smallest and the biggest, and everything else. And then people would be like, oh, that's ridiculous. Right here on the ground, we're fighting wars, and you're not a very practical person at all. It's like, well, are you really examining the practicalities of things? How are we doing things? How are we doing with all the technology and all the millennia we've developed? History's repeating itself over and over and over again. It's nauseating.
I always think about how in the whole timeline of even the solar system, humanity itself is such a tiny little hair. It's not even a blink. Like it's the smallest little speck. Um,
No, it's the equivalent of an atom in your body. Like
it's
it's not a
insane.
hair. It's not a blink.
It's so
It's
crazy.
not. You're talking about, and that's why it's like we're so much more precious than all this. You can either say, well, we're either completely unprecious or we're extraordinarily precious, and we'd better figure out a way to either survive or treat each other better, or I don't know. I don't have the answers, but you asked if I was spiritual, and I think about these things. But I think if you think about them, if you ponder them, by that definition, we are spiritual because we are thinking. We're worrying about these things. We're trying to fathom without the arrogance of thinking we're going to really understand it and have an answer. So versus the others that are so certain that I'm wrong. It's ridiculous.
So I agree. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I come from the woo-woo side, but I have always believed that we are innately spiritual beings. That's just who we are at our core. And I feel that how we come to understand that is taught. Again, it's the nature versus nurture, because if you even look at ancient civilizations, they were all very spiritual. And I
Yeah.
feel like while science may not have been a thing of the time, I don't feel like it negates that fact. I feel like there's space for them to coexist, you know?
We aren't coexisting very well.
Not even a little.
That's my that's my perspective on it. If I'm being,
Yeah.
I tend to be, some people will say I'm too blunt, but I don't think people are getting along very well,
Yeah.
especially
Not
not
even
this
a
moment
little.
in time.
Yeah. I feel like it really comes back down to, what actually this makes me think of? How for so long we had the geocentric model where everything revolves around the earth, we're special, all of this stuff. And while our space in the solar system has changed, that sense of us being special is always prevalent. And I feel like that's an important quality in many regards because that's what ultimately creates motivation and ambition. We want to do something. I have a voice. I have something I want to share. It can also get skewed and become this power dynamic. But I don't know where I was going with this. But it reminds, oh, I remember. With people, they want to be right. Other people are wrong. There's such a tug of war instead of understanding that there could be multiple perspectives, all of which can be right. I mean, whatever one we believe in is our truth, but that doesn't mean our truth is more true than somebody else's truth.
Your question about why don't people confront death or mortality? I think that we're so focused on how special we are that this idea of mortality is anathema because we're all told we're so special. And so, like, if you're told that, how can you confront? At a certain point, it's like if a large enough group of people says they're so special, well, they start to fight against the people who tell them who also think that they're special. So you have these a lot of people feeling special.
Yeah.
I don't know. As also someone who used to teach, this idea that we're all these, unicorns. We're all so special, and you're born a genius. And it's like, no, you have to work really hard and rack your brain and sweat and breathe it and live it. And it's just like this idea that failure isn't you're not allowed to, you can't fail anymore. You participated, also was there. You got a medal. I don't think that helps, to be honest with you. I don't know if any of that helps. It certainly doesn't create any accountability from a kind of performance perspective.
And it takes away from that community. We're not working together. You're working for yourself.
Yeah, you're working for yourself because you're so special.
Yeah.
And the standards that govern someone else's, don't apply to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, that's we've just gone so far to the extremes on either side, right? Like, I truly believe that it's funny, you can talk about it in the context of housing. There's this thing called the missing middle, densities and kinds of architecture that serve the vast majority of people who work and have, make a living, but can't, that aren't wealthy, but also aren't poor. And those architectures and scales in a lot of cities don't exist, especially Toronto. And and the world seems to have lost the middle. Where we are is in these extremes. And in the context of, like, if we even talk about housing in Toronto, you have these 50-story towers, and you have these, single family homes, and then, we've tried to recently fill the gap with this missing middle, quote unquote. But that also applies to politics. There's this incredible missing middle of rational thought, and it applies to so many things. And it's like everything is so dogmatic and ideological. It's just flabbergasting, to be honest with you. It's awe, and I am in constant awe of the just ridiculousness and the lack of circumspection around where our world is sort of operating on, and that we're not being told the truth on these platforms either about that. And gosh, a rapprochement of the middle could be good.
Yeah, things are so extreme right now.
It's so radical, that idea. Oh, but that's so wishy-washy. Oh, you mean rational thought? It's wishy-washy? Hmm.
Oh goodness. It reminds me of like in theater or in acting, there are lead characters, but there's that quote. I don't remember how it goes, but it's like there are no big roles or something. Like all roles matter the same because they're all painting an experience. And if you have one aspect of it missing, even if it's just in the background, you're losing something. You're losing some of that experience. All parts matter equally. And I feel instead of us operating from that, sure, we all are special. We may have our own little niche and our way of thinking, and that's great, but it all paints this bigger picture. We're focusing more on oh, well, I'm the main character. I'm the main character. I'm the main character. And it's a very subtle shift, in, I guess, just standing in yourself as a main character versus understanding the purpose that you play in this greater framework. It's
I grapple with that.
Subtle. Yeah.
I grapple with that a lot as an artist. Well, not an artist, but an architect. And the way people want to consume design, and it's just so much easier for them to consume something that they can really point to a figure. It's easier for them to understand. A particular aesthetic is driven by a figure, this hero or genius or lifestylist, whatever you want to call it, politician. We're almost built to celebrate that somehow. Going back to what you were talking about, psychology, it's like, well, it seems that we're sort of programmed in a way, or it's instinctive to be attracted to that singular idea of the person in charge, or the creator, the artist, the artist figure. And I grapple with that. But I also called my architecture firm Partisans. I didn't call it Alex Josephson. So what I like is now maturing and creating some space for the brilliant people that work with me to also have some limelight. and it's not just about me, but there is that tension. Like we all want to be successful, and the question is, how do I build a business that is an open platform for maybe even breakthroughs and ideas because of the nature of the platform. It's funny, like it's just a different angle of the rat race in the end.
Yeah. It's interesting too,
Yeah.
because I feel like in my brain, mm, in an abstract space, I can conceptualize the difference between like, oh, okay, main character versus standing in your purpose within a community. But if I apply it to something like dance, if you go on an audition to backup dance for an artist, you can't make the dance moves too different. You can't find your own voice within them because then there's no continuity. But you also have to, like, I don't know, have all of this presence within the confines of this structure. And it's so much finer, I think, than my brain had originally thought, especially in areas where it is like a competition. You're always competing with people. Like, how do you find the balance of maintaining your magic, but also, I don't know, there's so many things at play there. I guess I didn't fully consider that.
It's such a big question.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the way what's celebrated, the content generation, repeated familiar content generation, frankly, doing the same thing over and over and over again, a kind of a monastic approach to your art. Anything that contradicts that is not part of the algorithm. It's not repetitive. So everybody's trying to fit the algorithm. Um, so yeah, it's really hard. And also at the same time, building something out of nothing, you're so alone. You may have resources and you may have people that work with you, but in the end, when you're building something, you're responsible for it. And even with respect to what we were just talking about, like, okay, let's talk about me again for a second. People have a hard time, it seems, understanding. I started a platform called Cumulus. It's not an architecture firm. It's a space where we can come together and be whole and preserve our memories and the most important things in our lives, or manifest what we want, what we need from the world and our families. And at the same time, I'm running an architecture firm that's doing really serious projects. And it's like it's not allowed. I can't be a great architect and a great tech founder. And that's because people refuse to allow for it. There's rules. You have to focus. Tell that to Elon Musk. I mean, we're like 1,000 other people that are, But I think the reversion to the mean is that most people expect you to conform to this monastic approach to your, like, just do your thing. Be even if you're in charge of your thing, just be a cog and do the same. I need to recognize it. I need your ideas to be consistent. You can't change. Wow. I mean, the idea also, the way this applies to politicians is scary because it means they can't learn.
Mm-hmm.
They can't learn. So if you elect someone and their ideas are this today, but facts say that, well, that's not true and we need to do this, the idea that they can't change is really bad. And so we're also seeing this in Canada right now, where there's just been an incredible sea change where people have crossed the floor politically. For what reasons, who knows? On one level, it's like, listen, you've been elected by people. Maybe you should express your change as an opinion and get elected again. Um, but in Canada, the debate is really like, well, if you change your opinion, should you have to go and get elected again? Like, if you change your party and your opinion position and so significantly, do you need to go back and ask for permission? And my gut instinct is yes, because you're there if you really believe in democracy, then probably if it wasn't so marginal, whatever jurisdiction you represent, maybe you should ask again.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, democracy is about these people and their agency and their freedom to change their opinion. So it's a double-edged sword. I have a hard time being so absolutist about it. But when it comes to living life, the expectation that we celebrate what we repeat and become experts in over and over and over again is, Malcolm Gladwell made it famous, right? In his book, that the one who focuses, 10,000 hours and then 20,000 hours, the person who's focused on doing the same thing over and over and over again at the earliest time is the one who gets the further ahead, whether it's an NHL player, an artist, or a politician. Is the same true for a scientist? Who knows? But there is this celebration of the rigid approach.
I've gotten into so many arguments with very traditional, like older generation dance teachers, because with dance, I mean, with anything, I have a lot of hobbies. I like to explore. I want to be out there. I love learning about different cultures through different styles of dance. So I want to, get all in there. And I've had many people tell me that I'm not allowed to, that it's just a waste of time. I need to find my niche and I need to stick to it. And it's like, how about my niche is that I explore? That is going to be my niche.
Dance is an interesting subject because there's such clear lines. You've got Balanchine, you've got contemporary dance. You put them together, they don't, people don't like that. I remember I went to the ballet recently in Toronto, and you had classic ballet for the first half, and then the second half of the night was Crystal Pipe, and the reactions were just like, these are not compatible. That is not ballet. And it's like, well, one is a traditional approach and a monastic approach to that's beautiful in a certain way. It's also very anachronistic in the context of where we are today, but that's fine. Just put that in a box over there. I can appreciate it. Does it feel awkward to me? Yeah, it seems a bit awkward. It's definitely performative. It's a performance. And then this other thing over here, which is, can you create a rhythm and can 100 people and their energy and their movements be choreographed in a way that brings this other dialectical outcome? And it's profound. The reactions are like, that doesn't belong here. And I was like, well, I actually, my hair stood up much more on the contemporary Crystal Pipe than it did on the the traditional Balanchine style ballet. And it was, but what I like about that is the kind of viscerality of the opinions. At least it moved people, either to hate it or dislike it so much that they said it doesn't belong. So at least it's not middle of the road mediocre. And when I say earlier about like, well, we're missing the middle, it's like that. It's not. They're not mediocre. They're actually extremely rigorous, because it takes a lot more things into account, I believe. Maybe the traditional ballet is at a higher standard as well, because it has such a bar to perform against that maybe for some people also you could criticize that performance and saying, well, that's not at that same level. They're okay dancers. They're not the world's best. Anyway.
I had this conversation with my mom recently, actually. Her mom is from Guatemala, her dad's from Mexico, and then my dad is just all like European. So I've always been in this in between of like, I look very white, but I also come from Latin culture. And it's that weird space where growing up, I always wanted to be welcomed more by the Latin community, but I'm very tall and white, and I just stood out very much. And with the white community, it's like, fine, I can make do whatever. But there's just this special element to Latin culture that I've always loved that I felt like was kind of off limits for whatever reason. And I feel like throughout my whole life, I've been very curious of that. And I've had many jobs, like even within the African American community, where I was the only white person. My partner is literally from Africa. I think being in this like in between space has always been a theme in my life, where even with dance, I don't want to just belong to one thing. I don't want to just focus on it. I want my focus to be on the exploration of all of these different variables. I just like shaking things up ever so slightly.
Well, I think I don't see the reason why you can't. I mean, if you look at, uh, I mean, I brought a good example up with the crystal pipe.
Yeah.
It's not all the same stuff, but there is a kind of thread that weaves between, which is like, from the many, can you create something new? Can
Mm-hmm.
the choreography of a large group lead you to a new aesthetic experience or a new standard? And it can. And there's various different, and so many, and the playing field is so open. It doesn't have to be based on a narrative of love and desertion, or like these sort of, typical classical myths and stories we like to focus on. And then, for instance, in dance, there's Bathsheba, right? There's another one, and these are very different. These are very different approaches, and are their works completely consistent between each other? No, but what is consistent is a questioning of what is the dance,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that you can't put that in contrast with the classical and them stand eye to eye, is therein lies the rub, right?
Well, just to pull things full circle, I suppose, what is your favorite aspect of being a human being?
Huh. It's the struggle, because when you finally prevail, it's so amazing.
Mm.
and and that's not just a work thing. It's also, seeing my daughters, uh like, just grow and evolve, and see that they're grappling with life existing, and it's so beautiful to see them grow, and just their sense of independence at such a it's so beautiful. And I think it all comes from the struggle. I kind of joked the other day, what's the difference between little boys and little girls? And I was like, girls seem to be a lot more comfortable with existing,
Mm.
like being in their bodies, at least in my
Interesting.
in my experience of my daughters. And I'm like, they just seem so comfortable with being alive, and I feel so blessed. Um, but maybe it's a terrible thing to say. Um, I know I wasn't. I was a typical boy, and that difference, maybe is the beauty in the world.
Mm.
That struggle is beautiful. So yeah.
I would say mine is curiosity, but I feel like that's also very similar in a way because it's the act of exploring new possibilities, right? If you're struggling, you're working through something. You're like in this processing phase, which I appreciate about curiosity as well.
Yeah. And investing in your curiosity. It's such a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, this was very insightful. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I had a lovely time, and hopefully we cross paths in the future, if not another catch up at some point, but in the energy.
Absolutely. Well, if you could just remind everyone, please, where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm Alex Josephson, founder of Artisans Architecture in Toronto, Canada, as well as Cumulus, CUMULUS.world, and trying to make the world a better place. Come
Amen.
visit come visit us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining again. Always so insightful to chat with you. Everybody, go check out Cumulus. Go create your little inner child or manifestation world. Use some magical tools. Support some wonderful people. I'm sending all my love. Thanks for being here. I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for listening to Diary of a Psychic Medium with me, Amber Amrine. To learn more about me, book a session, learn about my mentorship program, all that good stuff, you can visit channelwithamber.com. Follow me on Instagram at channelwithamber. Special thank you to Unicorn Heads for my theme song, A Mystical Experience. I'll see you next time.